It's time to lock in my limitless chip ahead of match day 3 now that we know the teams that have qualified, the ones that finished top, and an important update regarding Kylian Mbappe. I feel confident with the team that I've picked and I can't wait to show you guys it. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, please do drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button for daily Euro fantasy content. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, a quick review on match day 2 for anyone that's interested. Ended up scoring 72 points, around 320k in the world, which I'm pretty happy with. I think that's okay after 2 match days. Team, as we look at here, really disappointing to see 0 points from Goalkeepers. I was hoping he was going to be a bit of a differential. Turned out to be a disaster over the last 2 match days. But the 2 transfers I made was Akanji and Musiala coming in, who I put the captaincy on. I ended up sticking with that from day 1, so I was really happy with that. Yes, I could have moved it to some of the other options, but realistically, apart from Mittelstadt, no one really delivered outside of Musiala's 9-pointer. So all in all, really happy with the team. But as we mentioned, we're going into match day 3 with the limitless chip active, and I'm pretty set on the team that I've selected. So let's go through some of the points that we need to know, some of the players that we need to target, and of course this draft reveal. So looking ahead to match day 3, I want to highlight a few things I think are essential to know, because especially if you're in your limitless chip, we need to process as much information as possible from what we've learnt in those opening 2 match days. And again, we're only picking a team for 1 game week in isolation, so we really need to get this right. So first up, Mbappe actually played last night in a friendly. I believe he bagged 2 goals, I think 2 assists, come off after the 60th minute. To me, that sounds like they're just getting him back up to fitness ahead of the game against Poland. Now we need to remember, France aren't officially qualified. They're definitely going to go through, but it's all about what position they finish. They could finish anywhere from 1st to 3rd, and really obviously want to get that top spot to not meet a tough opponent. So I fully expect Mbappe to play in match day 3 against a Poland team who have already been eliminated from the competition. So just note, Mbappe did play last night in a friendly. Next up, there are a couple of notable players that are now suspended going into match day 3, and that includes Spain's Rodri. Realistically, I know a lot of people owned him, but they weren't really going to consider him in a limitless team, and the replacement for Rodri in that Spanish team also I don't think is going to be a viable option in our teams. On the other hand, one that is quite interesting is Portugal's Leao has been suspended for match day 3. Now, while he hasn't been massively owned, as a person who's activated the limitless chip, bringing in Portuguese players, this may have opened the door for a potential differential in that team. Now, of course, as we mentioned, Portugal are through, they're top. So we could see, for example, Ronaldo rested and now Leao at the team. We could see people like Pedro Neto, we could see Diogo Jota come into this side to get some minutes ahead of the knockout stages. And that's quite an important suspension that we need to note, especially for chasing some differentials in your team. Next up, Shaw still isn't training with this England team. It's a disaster from Gareth Southgate. If Shaw goes into the knockout stages having played 0 minutes, I think he doesn't play at all in this tournament. It's too much of a risk. But of course, from a fantasy perspective, it means I think Trippier annoyingly still is an option for the team. But I also think it means it still doesn't make England a great investment because we're seeing such an unbalance in the team. Next up, few teams are actually qualified. We will touch on this in a minute, but Germany have qualified, Spain have qualified and are top of the group, Portugal have qualified and are top of the group. And of course, those that have qualified and are top are going to be really unappealing in terms of predicting that lineup. But we will come on to that in a minute when we look at the next section. Last few points. All of Group A lineups will be revealed before tonight's deadline. Remember, it's an 8 p.m. deadline tonight. Germany in particular, a team that have qualified, but of course not top. We will see their team sheet and know exactly which players are starting, and that will really help decide what our limitless chip is going to look like, because if we do see maybe a Volker start down the middle, that could be a great differential for our Euro fantasy teams. Lastly, remember, you cannot use a chip in match day 4 going into the round of 16. We all get unlimited transfers to change our team. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm going to use it in match day 4, you can't. So if you come out the group stages playing 0 chips, the only times you can play them is match day 5, which is the quarters, match day 6, which is the semi-finals, or match day 7, which is the final. And honestly, I don't think using a chip in the final is worthwhile because you can't use manual subs to really optimize that chip. Next up, taking a look at those match day 3 important fixtures, and I've highlighted a couple here that we need to know about. So the ones that are in a orange square means that they've qualified but they aren't top, for example Germany. So even though Germany can do a bit of rotation, they definitely want to lock down that first spot in the group. So even though they're through, I wouldn't say rotation is guaranteed in that team. The ones with a green rectangle, Spain, Portugal, are teams that have qualified and are automatically top of their group. So for me, that screams rotation in those teams like Spain and Portugal. So do be wary of those teams, especially those that are playing later on in the match day like Portugal. We're going to get no information before this deadline tonight. So you really are just having a stab in the dark on certain players. And if you miss, it's going to be really painful. But obviously if you hit, it could be massive returns. Poland, the only ones with a red rectangle, they are eliminated from the tournament. So you would think with France playing them, that's quite an optimal fixture, especially with France needing 1 point in that game. I would expect them to win that quite comfortably against a Poland team who are naturally deflated. Last up, I put a few X's next to certain teams. I just think if you're on a Limitless right now, you just don't touch these sort of players. So Albania, we've got Slovenia against an England team who are going to have to get a result. And even though Slovenia have been okay, it's not enough for me to think, oh, Slovenia players are needed in our sides. Czech Republic, Turkey, Georgia, again, I just don't see enough value in those teams right now to think to myself, we need to get one of those players in our teams. Maybe Çalhanoğlu if you want to go there for Turkey, but outside of that, I don't think you touch those teams. So when we break this down, I do think it is quite a difficult Limitless chip to go for. I look at Group A, of course, we are going to be getting these teams before the deadline. I think Germany, even though we might get some differentials available to us, it's a tough game against Switzerland who have to win this game. So for me, I think as a tough game, I think one Germany player is probably optimal. I wouldn't be going for three. Personally, I just don't think it's worth it. Scotland, Hungary, I think that's a good investment for Hungary players because Scotland, difficult to invest unless you go McTominay, and you just aren't going McTominay really. Looking at those games over there, Spain is going to be the hardest one to predict. I'd really tread carefully of who you select from that team. Croatia, Italy, I just don't see many appealing assets from either team. Maybe you could back the Italian defence, but again, Italy haven't necessarily been phenomenal in this competition. When we look at this here, Netherlands, Austria, really difficult to predict. Netherlands haven't been that impressive. Austria have, but also not many assets to invest in. France look great, but outside of Mbappe, no real attackers. Denmark, quite a shrewd investment if you want to go there. I think they will qualify alongside England in that group. And again, England right now, impossible to predict because Kane coming off after 60 odd minutes, we never would have seen that happen. Who is going to play in that three behind him? Very difficult situation to predict. So based on this, I think the Limitless is right for match day 3, but going for those teams that are qualified at the top are going to be very, very tough. But as I mentioned, if you get the right one, you could get some big returns. So with that said, let's move on to my team and I'll show you exactly who I've selected. So here is my match day 3 Limitless draft, and it's worth noting I will be doing a deadline live stream tonight around 6 p.m. So if I make any changes to this team, make sure you head over to that live stream because I will update you there and I hope to see you there. So in terms of the goalkeepers right now, it's obviously really, really important to note we've got to make sure we have goalkeepers on different days. Otherwise, there is no value in having goalkeepers. So England's Pickford and Portugal's Costa are currently in the team. I think England, for whatever people think, are still going to keep clean sheets in this tournament as they progress against the smaller teams. And I do think Slovenia is a good game for England, and I am expecting them to bounce back in some capacity. And regardless of that, even though they've been terrible offensively, I still think defensively they can hold their own. So Pickford is going to come in, and as I mentioned, we've got Portugal's Costa. The only doubt is that maybe they rotate goalkeepers now that they're top. Maybe Patricio gets some minutes, but I don't really see any value in that unless it's a sentimental move by the manager. So I will do a little bit more research to see maybe if that's a possibility. Otherwise, I think I'm pretty content with Pickford and Costa as my goalkeepers because I do think at least one of those will pick up a clean sheet with the opposition that they do have. Next up, taking a look at those defenders, and we've got some safe picks here, but also a nice differential that hopefully will feature. So first up, we got Mark Guy in there. I do think Trippier and I do think Kyle Walker will play again, which is really, really disappointing as an England fan, but I still think Mark Guy is the route to go for. He's playing really well, so has a potential chance of player of the match in any game that he's featuring in. Also, ball recoveries, he's fantastic in, so it's another avenue for points, and I don't really think any England defender is offering any attacking potential, really. So Mark Guy is in. I think he's a great pick, and even though we're on Limitless and we get a limited budget, I just don't really think I want to be bringing in Kyle Walker into this team because one, I just don't rate him, and two, I think Mark Guy's ball recoveries is way more valuable in this team. Double French defence, as I mentioned, I think France still have something to play for trying to get top spot. And in that matchday 2 game against the Netherlands, they were really pragmatic with their defensive setup. And I probably expect them to be the same against Poland. And I don't think Poland offer much offensively. So we're going for Theo Hernandez and Koundé, the fullbacks in that team. I don't expect them to come out. And I do expect a clean sheet from France. And Theo Hernandez still is a brilliant option with the offensive opportunities that he possesses. Grimaldo's coming in. As we mentioned, Spain have qualified and are top, so there's no reason for them to bring out their best 11. I expect Grimaldo to take over from Cucurella in this team at left back, and as we've seen in Leverkusen, is a real attacking option. I'm hoping he can replicate his team form for club and country. So hopefully Grimaldo plays, because he'll be a brilliant differential if he does do so. And we've also got Timothy Castagne. I think he's too expensive, but on a unlimited team, obviously he is a brilliant option for our side. So with this limitless draft, Castagne is in a game that Belgium have to win against Ukraine. Ukraine have done okay this tournament, but I don't see enough from them to suggest that they're going to beat Belgium. I'm hoping that they can put up a defensive performance, and Castagne does offer some attacking potential as well in this team. So that is going to be the defense. Pretty content with it. I think the double French defense is a really nice differential move. Moving into the midfielders, and there definitely is one spot here or two that are still up for grabs depending on what we hear in those lineups. So I wanted to bring in a couple of differentials. So one of those is going to be Spain's Oyarzabal. I think we're expecting him to come in as the forward. He was great in the friendlies, it's worth noting. And I do think he's a brilliant pick against an Albanian team which have been oppressive. But I do back the Spain team to score goals with the way they've been functioning. And I do feel like Spain are a perfect example of a team that, even though they might make multiple changes, the team, the way they play is going to remain the same. So that makes it very easy for players to come in and just basically adapt to the model that the team have. So Oyarzabal's in. I think he's great, and he's a bit OOP playing as a forward but a midfielder on the game. Currently got Christian Eriksen in. When I was looking at the fixtures, and I was thinking to myself, what teams have good fixtures and really are playing for something, and also a player that isn't a rotation risk and basically the talisman. And I came to the conclusion that Christian Eriksen is that guy. I think Denmark are definitely going to possess problems that Serbia are going to have to struggle with, and I think Eriksen is the man to go for right now. On set pieces, talisman in that team, and a good fixture, Christian Eriksen is in right now. Now, as I mentioned, Germany team we're going to get before the deadline. So I've basically just got Gundogan as a placeholder in the team. But we've seen Florian Wirtz go off early. We've seen Musiala come off early. Gundogan stays on that pitch, and importantly on penalties. The only way I'll change that is maybe if we got a rogue pick like Leroy Sané and I just wanted to be a bit more spontaneous, then maybe he would come in. But I think one Germany midfielder is going to be the play, and I'm just going to put the placeholder as Gundogan until we do that deadline live stream where we will get the Germany team reveal. Szoboszlai, the exact same thing as Eriksen. Lots to play for, talisman in that team on set pieces. I really like Szoboszlai against that Scotland defence, who now don't have Kieran Tierney, it's worth noting. And De Bruyne. Belgium have something to play for. Scored in match day 2. Looks really, really up for it. This competition, probably knows it's his last one. And Belgium still create opportunities for their attackers. So De Bruyne is going to be in against Ukraine. Finally, the forwards, and I've made a controversial pick here, and that is going to include Harry Kane. I can't believe we're in a world right now where Harry Kane is actually being debated in terms of both an England selection pick and a Euro fantasy pick, but we are in that world right now. So it's worth noting. In terms of alternatives, we are going to come on to a differential team in a minute with some alternatives to these players. But for me, Harry Kane still ticks all the boxes. I know he's been poor, but I don't see a world where Southgate doesn't start with him at least. On penalties, Fox in the box as we saw in match day 2. I know England are functioning poorly offensively as a team, but I think Harry Kane is the one that I feel more confident going towards. In terms of the midfielders, I think with Bellingham and Saka, Foden, very difficult to know what positions they're going to take up in this England team because Southgate may try to rejig things, but I'll be astonished if he takes his captain out of the starting 11, and I always back Harry Kane to score in these quote-unquote easier games. So Harry Kane is in for the game against Slovenia, which is going to be a really important game for England, and Southgate knows that. Mbappe is going to be in as well. With the news of him playing last night, I just don't see a world where I play my limitless chip and don't put Mbappe in that team, because if he does play against a Poland team and he's missed match day 2, he still wants to win that golden boot in this competition, and he is going to be head down trying to get goals for his team. Finally, Romelu Lukaku, third time lucky it sounds like. He has been a bit of a disaster class for all of us that have owned him, but he still gets the chances, and I just cannot not have him in my team knowing that he will eventually score a goal is coming. He's had 3 goals disallowed in 2 games. I think his haul is coming against Ukraine, and I'm praying it does so, because I am just offering blind faith as it is right now. So this is how the Limitless team is looking. I am pretty much locked in. As I said, if you want to stick around for the confirmed team, then make sure you do tune into the deadline live streams. I will be updating you of any changes we might get, because end of the day, if Germany drop a lineup and Gundogan isn't in it, then I will be making changes to this team. So with that said, let me show you a team full of differentials, because if you're watching this thinking, damn, this team is boring, let me show you a few alternatives that you could go for. So as we mentioned, if you are sat there thinking, I'm playing my Limitless chip and I want to go all out on differentials, then I have you covered. Now, a couple of these are still in the team from my previous team, because end of the day, they were differentials in their own right. So I don't want to be giving you another differential on top of a differential. So in terms of goalkeepers, and a lot of these, by the way, are below 10% owned, some of these below 5%. Casteels for Belgium, as I said, a must-win for Belgium. So I think Casteels is a good investment for that Belgian defence. And Schmeichel as well. Denmark, again, a really solid team this competition against a Serbia team who have struggled for goals somewhat. I do think Schmeichel is a great pick. I think he's like 2% owned, and we know if there is a penalty in that game, he is a little bit of a bandit when it comes to penalty saves. So I don't mind that goalkeeper combination, but of course, in terms of actually owning them both, not ideal. I probably would want one confident pick in there alongside one differential. Looking at the defenders, we still got Grimaldo and Castagne, because I just remain them being good options from a differential. Kieran Trippier's in, with Luke Shaw being out. I think Kieran Trippier plays again. I just really don't like him. But if you want a different England defender below 10%, Kieran Trippier probably is the one to go for. Iniaco of Portugal. We have no idea what that team's going to be. And this is the problem with going for Portuguese players, is unless you're in the know and you really know what team is going to go out, you are taking big risks. But I'm going to put Iniaco in. He could do well, but again, I just don't have any confidence of him starting. And Nathan Ake, this is a guy who definitely will start. Had 2 assists this competition. Ball recovery, as we know, is always good. And a must-win game against a very, very impressive Austrian team is worth noting. But I think Ake is a good investment if you back the Netherlands. In terms of the midfielders, I've kept Orzabal and I've kept Eriksen in that team because they kind of tick all the boxes. Leroy Sané is going to be the big one. I don't really know what Leroy Sané is like nowadays, but if he's anything like we saw now and then Munich in the Champions League, he is quite an exciting player, as we know. But Switzerland is a tough game, so I'm not saying that Germany players are guaranteed delivering points. Olmo was in. I think he's a great alternative if you want to go there. And we've also got Neto. I think he's really going under the radar, but he has changed the game for Portugal when he has come on in both games. I think he's been fantastic. And obviously the Georgia team, who could be out. Let's be real here. I think Portugal are going to have a good opportunity to put a few goals past them. And if you get the right Portuguese attacker, you could be in for a great day. Finally, Fulkrug, I know a lot of people are going there. I expect his ownership actually to creep up over the next few hours. He'll be great if he is confirmed to be starting. Griezmann, I think he will start, but he's playing deep at times, so he isn't a great pick for the forward line. I think you just would go for Mbappe end of the day. And we've gone for Chiesa. No real returns, but he has been great in the both games. Italy were a little bit disappointing, but I think the whole team were in general in match day 2 against a Croatia team who are conceding goals. I think Chiesa is a great alternative if you want to go for a forward. So those are the differentials if you want to be a little bit different. Let me know yours in the comment section. Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's Match Day 3 final team selection video. I really hope it provided some value. The Limitless chip is pretty much locked in, but as I mentioned, if you want to stick around for the exact team I go for, and of course, if you want a Q&A, make sure you tune into tonight's live stream before the deadline, where I'll be going through exactly that for you. If you have any questions, please do put them in the comment section, and as always, please do drop a like on the video and smash that subscribe button if you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next one, which will be tonight's live stream. Have an amazing day. Take care. Cheers.